Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to First Man Photography. Today we are going to be testing out this. It's the new Fujifilm XH1 and I've come to the absolutely stunning Lake District to really put it through its paces and try and figure out whether this is a genuine replacement for a DSLR. Come with me. The Fujifilm XH1 is the new top-of-the-range mirrorless camera from Fuji. It's been brought in to replace the smaller X-T2 and this is a really nice upgrade. It's more rugged, it's nicely weather sealed and it just feels much more solid in the hand, and with that weather sealing lets you get into places like this. It means you don't have to stop for the rain. It's got the same 24 megapixel sensor as the X-T2, so we already know it's going to be capable of capturing some really nice shots. Would have we wanted to see an upgrade from that? Maybe, but that is a nice sensor and quite capable. Part of what people loved about the X-T2, especially landscape photographers, was the small size. So it might be surprising to some that Fuji have made this camera bigger. Whilst at first that might not seem an obvious thing to do, I think it's very, very clever from Fuji because this just feels much nicer to hold in the hand, and that provides a certain level of versatility when you have to shoot with the camera all day, something like a wedding. Having that nicer grip, especially once you've got the battery grip on it and you can shoot with it all day, which just makes this camera potentially a really, really solid all-rounder. So whilst it is bigger than the X-T2, it is still significantly smaller and lighter than a pro-level DSLR, something like the Canon 5D Mark IV that I normally shoot with. And that reduction in weight today is going to make a really big difference to me because I'm used to carrying around a bag full of lenses, heavy cameras, and today I've got this with just one lens on. This lens is the 16 to 55 lens 2.8. It's an absolute peach of a lens. So let's get up into the mountains, put the XH1 through its paces, and all the video you see today that doesn't have the camera in it will have been shot on this. You don't see frozen waterfalls in the UK like that very often. It was a bit of a treacherous trek up, but with that little lone tree there and the frozen waterfall, that had to be captured. These mountain climbs never seem to get easier. I've been promising to get fit for a long time, but it just hasn't happened. But I still get up at the mountains. One nice feature of this camera though is that it's got a setting that lets you set the gain level of the microphone input for a built-in microphone that I'm using now, and also plugging an external microphone in, which means you don't need to be constantly swapping the gain or changing the gain every time you plug a better external microphone in. It's a really nice touch that lets me get moments like this. So another thing this camera has is a time-lapse mode. I'm just shooting a time-lapse of this scene right now. So we've stopped now for my first shot of the day, and unfortunately the conditions just aren't lending themselves to the perfect picture really, because we've got the cloud level really low down and it's cutting off the tops of the mountains in the distance. Although we do have some absolutely stunning reflections. But in the position I'm at the moment, there isn't really a shot to be had because there's just no light. So all I'm going to do is try and create a panorama to capture this scene because it is a stunning scene. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to firstly capture a panorama, doing it myself, stitching a series of images together that I shoot myself. And then this camera also has a built-in panorama mode. So I'm going to give that a try and then try and compare the two and see what they look like. I'll put them up on the screen for you to see now. now have found a shot because I found this tiny little bit of snow which I'm going to use as some interest in the foreground. Again, the conditions aren't perfect. The cloud base is coming down below the tops of the mountains. I do have a nice composition here. So I've got the snow, then I've got the smaller mountain just in front of us here, and then I'm going over the lakes and then up to Skiddaw, which is actually shrouded in the cloud at the moment. But it is going to be a nice shot. I'm going to use the bracketing feature of this camera to capture 3 exposures so I can combine them in post-processing to get all the dynamic range. Despite the clouds, the sky is still very bright, so that's something I feel that I need to do. Settings wise, I am at f16 because this foreground and snow is very close and I want to get everything in focus from the front to the back of the image. And then shutter speed, I'm at 1/30th of a second roughly, and then 2 stops either side of that, and ISO 200, which is the base standard ISO for this. So I'm going to take that shot now. I'm going to just put it on the 2-second timer and then wait, bracket that shot and have a look to see what that looks like. But yeah, that's looking pretty good. A bit of post-production in Lightroom later, adding in some interest and some moodiness with some contrast into this shot, and it should work out pretty nice. But it'll still let me give a good test of what this Fujifilm XH1 is capable of doing. So one of the big selling points of this camera is the new in-body 5-axis image stabilization. That means it's inside the camera rather than the lens, and it can really breathe some new life into some old lenses that don't have image stabilization. Now, whilst image stabilization has never really got me excited when it comes to stills, it definitely does when it comes to video, because when you're filming video, you want that nice, smooth footage, and the in-camera 5-axis stabilization provides that, and it's great with this camera. The video features are actually pretty heavyweight. It films 4K, it does 120 frames a second at full 1080p as well, and actually I've found that the video quality is actually exceptional. It's very much on a par with the Canon 5D Mark IV, which takes it into that sort of higher pro level DSLR video features, and it really is very good for video. It's not perfect though. There are a few issues around the focusing. The autofocus is not as good as you get with the dual pixel stuff on the Canon cameras, and it is a tiny bit fiddling with all the dials, switching between one mode and the other. So if you want to take pictures, you want to do normal speed video and then slow motion video, it is quite fiddly changing between all of them, and I've struggled with that a little bit today. But otherwise, it is a very nice camera. I like this camera so much for video that I would definitely use it as my vlogging camera if it were not for this stupid screen on the back. I don't really know what good that is. It flicks forward, it flicks up and down, it flicks sideways like that. I don't really know why, but it does not flip out so I can see myself and shoot in full selfie mode, which is what you need when you are vlogging. It's a massive disappointment for me because otherwise this probably would have become my vlogging camera. But that's a small snag and something that I've got a complaint about. Most people aren't going to have that problem if they're not vlogging, but otherwise good video features. Okay, so I'm set up for another shot and I've pretty much given up on the weather and getting some good light. I'm just trying to make the most of the things I do have around me, and I've found this lone tree in front of me here with this really interesting mossy rock, adding some real interest to the foreground, and then it's framing this absolutely stunning landscape that I have in front of me here. It's looking down the valley past the mountain of Skiddaw to Bassenthwaite Lake, and it's just a really beautiful scene. It would be even better in the summer when the sun sort of sets in that direction as well, so that's one for the memory banks. But today it's just going to be a nice test to see what detail I can pull out of this camera and try and make another dramatic shot, because that's what it's going to be all about today. Settings wise, I'm at f16 because this tree and the rock are quite close to me. I have a shutter speed of 1/15th of a second. I'm just doing it with one frame this time because the sky is a bit duller than it was before. ISO 200 again, and it's a pretty straightforward shot other than that. So I'm going to go ahead with this Fujifilm XH1, take the shot, 2-second timer, and it's a really nice composition. If I had some golden light striking that tree and that rock, it would be perfect. In the end, I've had a great day shooting with this camera. It really is a nice camera to get out and about with. It's rugged, it's good in this weather as it started to rain, and I've just had fun shooting with it today. It isn't the perfect camera though. There are a few problems with it. The fact that there's no bulb timer, it means that you've got to plug an extra shutter release cable in if you want to do long exposures. The menu system isn't perfect either. It's a bit fiddly. That might just be me getting used to using the Fuji camera though. So again, not a big problem. The biggest problem for me by some distance though is the fact that this is a cropped sensor camera, because what that means is you're going to lose some dynamic range compared to a full frame sensor camera, and also in low light it doesn't perform quite as well as some full frame cameras. The problem is in low light, and I've done some tests with this, it's no different from any other crop sensor camera, is when you start to get the noise coming into your picture, it just kind of feels harsh, it feels mushy, and you lose a lot of contrast and sharpness from the image. You just don't get that with a full frame camera. It kind of feels a bit more natural, like film grain was, and that's just what I prefer. But it is a minor thing. It's not going to be a problem for everybody. This does come in at, with this lens, about 2,500. It's about £1,700 without the lens, and that's probably about right for the amount of quality that you're getting. This is, though, I think, much better than the Canon 6D Mark II that I tried out a couple of weeks ago. It just feels more solid, it feels better built, and to be honest, the video features are better, and you're getting probably better pictures as well, as long as you are at low ISO. The thing is though, is that the Sony a7 Mark III is about to come out. That's a very similar price to this. It's a very similar size to this, and that is a full frame censored camera. So before I finally make the leap from a DSLR to this mirrorless type camera, I'm going to need to try out that Sony first. At the moment, this is not going to be replacing my DSLR because I just love the Canon 5D Mark IV, but it does come very close. I'm so upset that it doesn't have a better flip screen because it would have become my vlogging camera. The video features are good. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed this type of review, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can see them as soon as they come out. I'm out and about in places like this almost every week doing vlogs as well, so if you're into landscape photography, this is the place to be. Please do leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Is this going to replace your DSLR? Are you going to buy one? If you have any questions about it, let me know as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. Anyway, I'll see you on another one very, very soon. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography in the extraordinary Lake District. Out.